I had ChatGPT analyze this combat video to break down what's happening. Let's see what insights it can offer about the situation. This keeps it brief but adds a bit more detail. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments. If the video depicts scenes from the war in Ukraine, here's a possible breakdown of what could be happening based on the context of ongoing conflict in the region. Opening scene. The initial setting might show a contested area, such as an urban battlefield, a rural front line, or a damaged landscape. Movement in the background could indicate military activity, such as troops mobilizing, vehicles, tanks, armored personnel carriers, or civilian cars, moving into position or reconnaissance activities. The environment might also reflect the aftermath of conflict, like destroyed infrastructure, displaced civilians, or signs of artillery shelling. Middle action. The increased motion or activity might signify an escalation. This could involve combat actions like exchanges of gunfire, artillery impacts, or troop maneuvers. It's also possible that it portrays civilians caught in the crossfire, seeking shelter or evacuating. The scene might include drones overhead, common in the war in Ukraine for reconnaissance or strikes, or visible signs of advancing forces. Tension at this stage could imply preparations for an attack, defensive positioning, or an unfolding ambush. Ending frame. The resolution might depend on the nature of the events. If the conflict escalates, the ending might show destruction from an airstrike, missile impact, or other dramatic events such as close combat. Alternatively, it could depict a lull in the fighting, such as soldiers retreating, regrouping, or civilians finding temporary safety. This part might leave the viewer wondering about the immediate consequences, like casualties, territorial changes, or the humanitarian toll. What could be going on? Military engagement, active combat between Ukrainian forces and Russian-backed troops or invaders. It might show defensive operations, offensives, or skirmishes in contested zones. Civilian impact. Civilians could be fleeing, sheltering, or dealing with the aftermath of strikes, e.g., damaged homes, loss of life. Reconnaissance, drone usage. Drones may be surveying positions, guiding artillery, or conducting strikes, a hallmark of modern warfare in Ukraine. Aftermath of combat. The frames might reflect the destruction and loss resulting from earlier battles, with damaged buildings, wreckage, or casualties visible. Strategic movements, troops or vehicles repositioning, which could indicate preparation for an assault or retreating under pressure. Expanding on the potential scenarios in the context of the war in Ukraine, here are additional possibilities or layers to consider for what could be happening. Tactical and strategic context. Urban warfare. If the video shows an urban setting, it could depict close quarters combat, snipers in concealed positions, or house-to-house fighting, hallmarks of modern urban warfare. The destruction in such areas often points to artillery barrages or airstrikes. Frontline standoff. If it's a rural or open area, the scene might show a frontline engagement. Trenches, dugouts, or camouflage positions may appear, reflecting the entrenched nature of many battles in Ukraine. Ambush or counteroffensive. Sudden movements or escalation could indicate an ambush by one side or a counteroffensive to regain lost ground. This is a recurring theme in the war, especially in contested zones. Humanitarian aspects. Civilians under fire. Civilians might be caught in the middle, seeking shelter in basements, evacuating under fire, or dealing with destroyed infrastructure. Images of displaced people or humanitarian aid efforts are also common. Medical evacuations. The video might depict wounded soldiers or civilians being treated or evacuated under dangerous conditions. Makeshift hospitals or field medics could be present. Weaponry and tactics. Artillery and shelling. If explosions or smoke are visible, it could reflect the heavy use of artillery, one of the most devastating weapons in this war. Craters, destroyed vehicles, or scattered debris would point to this. Drone activity. Drones play a critical role in reconnaissance, adjusting artillery, and even conducting direct strikes. The video might show a drone's perspective or their impact on the battlefield. Missile strikes. If the frames show rapid, large-scale destruction, it could be from missile strikes targeting military or civilian infrastructure. Psychological impact, tension, and fear. The actions of those depicted, whether soldiers preparing for combat, civilians fleeing, or even moments of stillness before chaos, might reflect the constant uncertainty and fear inherent in war zones. Propaganda or documentation. The video could also be intended for propaganda purposes, to document atrocities, or to provide evidence of battlefield conditions for international observers. Specific historical or current events. Given that the war in Ukraine has specific hotspots, e.g. Bakhmut, Kherson, Donetsk, the video might correspond to a known or ongoing battle. If elements like geography, uniforms, or flags are visible, they might identify the factions or regions involved, providing more clarity.